This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com. This show is brought to you by IndyWrestling.us. Check out IWC, RWA, and more. And listeners like you, support this show at patreon.com/Wrestling Mayhem Show.
Hungry as fuck, but I ain't starving yet. Chain for the pain, cocktail bar set. Never said I was a gangster or thug, but I'm an animal. Peanut for the taste of the fly.
Hey guys, it is the Indy Mayhem Show. I'm Mike Sorg at Sorgatron on Twitter here in the Sorgatron Media Studios in Pittsburgh, PA. This is the show where we talk about and with people around and in independent professional wrestling. And tonight is no different looking. And also, apparently, entrepreneurialism has been an ongoing theme on the show lately, I'm noticing, especially if you're joining us here on this recording night. But anyways, first, please go check out WrestlingMayhemShow.com, IndyWrestling.us. That's where you'll find past interviews for this, the Indy Mayhem Show, as well as other great podcasts. Like there's a Fight Society podcast, there's a Rise podcast. There is the Wrestling Mayhem Show itself, where we just talk about how bad Raw is sometimes. And there's a Monday Mayhem Show where we just talk about the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda because we're really not happy about Raw right now. But hey, you know how it goes. But anyways, this is the interview show, so we won't be talking about what happened last weekend or anything like that, but we do have with us in the studio one Danny Abel is joining us right now. Let me get your right title there so they know who you are. There you go. There you go, video people. We got you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So
I'm excited to be here.
I'm interested in this because I have so many question marks on you. So
most people do.
We've seen so much. I think people have a lot of questions for Danny Abel that they've asked over the years. And I want to get into that. And you also have a really cool thing that you're going to be telling us about that you're working on kind of moving forward. But first, let's look at the past.
Okay.
Tell me about young Danny Abel. Tell me about young Danny Abel's first experience with professional wrestling.
Ooh, as a fan or starting training, or
usually I phrase it. What's your first memory of wrestling?
My first memory of wrestling, I don't remember a time where wrestling wasn't in some way incorporated in my life.
Okay.
Ironically,
from the womb.
Yeah. Ironically, I think both of my older brother and my younger brother were more into it as little kids.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of didn't get the idea of why people wanted to watch people fight, but this is like 2 and 3 years old to me.
Yeah.
Once we got the Super Nintendo video games, and I was playing along on Royal Rumble and WrestleMania and Raw is War for Super Nintendo. That kind of moved out of my head.
I was like, I get it now.
I've kind of always been a contrarian, and within my family, everyone liked wrestling. So I was like, oh, I'm going to not like wrestling.
Are you the only one that became a wrestler of your family?
Yeah,
so you took it the full way.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, I once I dove into it, I dove hard into it. But by the time I was 6 or 7, I was fully invested. Bret Hart was my favorite at that age, then Mankind, and then Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So at what point did you say, I want to actually get in here and do this?
I'd say 9 or 10, elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of had 2 career paths that I wanted to go in. One was animation and the other was wrestling, just kind of the 2 things that I always loved to watch and be involved in. So I've kind of explored both avenues with, an art degree and, wrestling. I started wrestling, in school, 4th or 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Was that inspired by seeing it on TV?
Yeah. Yep.
You're just like, well, this is the amateur. I want to be a pro.
Yeah, and I mean, at that time, I was like, well, how do people get into wrestling? And they talked about people's sports backgrounds. It's like, okay, so they want athletes, and Kurt Angle debuted, and it's like, oh, okay, so he was a real wrestler, and so I'm like, okay, I'll be a real wrestler.
It's always the weirdest distinction, isn't it? Because like someone's like, oh, it's pro wrestling, so it's like WWE. I'm like, yeah, but it's like the locals. Oh, so it's like amateur wrestling. I'm like, no, that's something different. Like it doesn't line up like any other sport.
That's exactly it. People get confused literally every time you talk about it if they're not involved in it in any way. It's like, yeah, I wrestle on weekends. It's like, what? They don't even know what the follow-up question should be. They first think that I'm doing like Olympic style wrestling somewhere, and then when I tell them it's like WWE, then they think that I'm wrestling in the WWE. And it's like, no, it's
oh, are you
it's
down
the
at the
independence.
Oh, are you down at the arena?
They talk about this on WWE. They talk about how Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, everybody worked their way up through the Indies, and you'd think that's kind of common knowledge. It's like being in a band. You start in clubs and doing smaller shows, and then hopefully you eventually grow and get in front of a bigger audience. It's the same thing.
So tell me about let's get into a little bit because I have seen you from I don't know across how many promotions by now, and it's always been like, what the hell is Danny Abel going to do this month? Like everything from tell me a little bit what Danny Abel. I know you gone by DK Abel. Sometimes just Abel. Like I don't know if you had a Madonna phase there, But tell me what Danny Abel is when you guys come out and see you in action.
Danny Abel is me,
Mm-hmm.
and whoever you come out to see is who I am manifesting as. Given the current climate, it's kind of like trying to ask someone what Chris Jericho's gimmick is. Well, I mean, it kind of depends on what point in his career you're following,
Right.
and that's kind of how I've always been. It's like, okay, I started out in PWX and I was going off of my amateur background, and I did like a MVP super athlete kind of a thing.
Okay.
And then I took that gimmick with my early tag team with Dion Cruz. We were the Playmakers, and we were still kind of doing the super athlete thing. I started working at RWA, and that evolved. They kept putting me into different tag teams with different people that we didn't really fit, and so I started to protest the booking, and that started my revolutionary
Is it the Abel Nation?
Daniel K. Abel phase, and then I started recruiting other people who were disenfranchised with the booking and the management, and that's when I became a socialist dictator, obviously.
And I believe that came to the inevitable conclusion of a socialist dictator, if I recall.
Yes, I got overthrown, and then I disappeared and was never mentioned again.
Just like how it rolls out.
Yeah, but I took elements from that gimmick to other promotions, because that's where I started kind of doing like a warrior look, because I was both the dictator and the general of my own army. So I started doing the silver armor paint, and then I kind of advanced that into like an Iron Man, superhero, He-Man, post-apocalyptic. DK Abel, the Unstoppable.
I believe you are currently like at a helmet and stop sign shield.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of situation.
That's the story I went with for my first comic book. That's the version of me that you will see at Fight Society currently. And then the offshoot of that gimmick was from across the multiverse, the supervillain alter ego, which was Darth Khan over at Rise, or more accurately, the Abel Variety Show before Rise.
Yes. It was. So I started working with Rise early in 2018, and I was just like, what is happening now? Like, should my cameras be rolling? What's happening right now? And you'd be doing this kind of this you'd be doing this show as people were coming in, and you incorporated the screen. Louis the Nerd was a big part of it. I would walk backstage and there would be people like two people dressed as Lewis and a cardboard standout and everything. Explain to me what the concept was in that. I know, I know we kicked you to footage. I wasn't sure if you had ever done anything with that.
Well, I'm still, I always have a number of things going on. So I'm still editing the footage into a full package that I'm going to release, and hopefully eventually get the project going again with like a second season. But the idea was basically to do a sci-fi comedy wrestling show.
Okay.
And I think we accomplished that. I got positive feedback from everyone who's involved and everyone who observed it. For someone who's coming in, one time and didn't know the storyline, I could see how it would be a bit confusing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how my whole career has been. If you followed me from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, it all makes sense. But if you catch me somewhere in the middle, you're kind of like, well,
It's kinda weird.
What's Danny Abel doing now?
It's kind of weird reading the middle chapter of a book series.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so, the idea of the series was that I wanted to take over Rise by way of Lewis's mind, for all intents and purposes. I wanted to make him my ally and my tag team partner because of his super intelligence, Lewis the Nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I figured with his brain and my brawn, we would conquer everything, but he rejected the idea from the start, and we ended up having the first ever interdimensional game over match, which featured us wrestling across various scenes and platforms.
I believe there was a Guitar Hero session in there, if I recall.
Yeah, that was going into it. That was the concert to promote the
yes,
final brawl.
Yes. There was a very Mortal Kombat setup.
Yes,
I recall.
That was the test of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, throughout the series, every episode had kind of a different theme to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought in different characters. I brought back Steven Strick, who I wrestled in VOW. I had a feud with him. He was kind of a big monster character, so I recruited him to try to conquer Lewis. We brought in the video game character who was controlled by the Xbox controller.
Mm-hmm.
He was popular. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of elements. I'd have to go back and watch the whole series through to be able to go over the whole thing. But the final match, it was called a game over match because we each had 3 lives. So it was a first to lose 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Lost the match, and Lewis ended up getting the best of me and vanquished Darth Khan out of the universe for the time being, until I get the video finally edited and recruit members for the second season.
So, I mean, where did this come from? Like, kind of this, using wrestling from kind of a different angle.
Honestly, it was just kind of trying to observe where I thought wrestling was going.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I started, everyone was kind of first name, last name,
Mm-hmm.
John Cena, Randy Orton, not very gimmicky. And
like even your thing, you were doing a super athlete thing. Like I kind of fit that mold.
Yeah, and I always liked like the '90s over the top gimmick kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to kind of start doing them. And I started doing video packaging because I studied video editing and stuff. So I started doing video packages and putting them online. I don't know anyone else who was doing it when I started doing that. And then I was just like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that I can do with this, and more people have started doing it over the years, probably coming to the same observations that I have. Because if you look at '90s gimmicks, they were all kind of corny, but we've had like the explosion of just pop culture in general since then. So everyone gets these ideas from movies and TV and stuff, and they kind of incorporate them and work them into what they're doing. And that's what I did. And like, the idea, if you watched the character that I brought into the Rise pre-show, when I'm watching Raw now and I see what Bray Wyatt's doing, that's what it reminds me of. I was doing like this little kid kind of show with video game characters and cartoons, but I was a supervillain. And then Bray Wyatt is like, okay, I'm gonna do a Mr. Rogers thing, and then I'm gonna be a zombie. I'm not trying to say I think I influenced him or anything. I think that we had similar thought processes where we're like, okay, how can we take this to a different level?
Kind of looking at wrestling sideways and doing something different. I feel like a lot of that maybe comes from this, as far as what we see in the mainstream with WWE. I think a lot of those ideas kind of come from the Lucha Underground side, because there was a lot of that. I mean,
It's kind of, I think a lot of people were having similar thoughts about trying to revigor wrestling at the same time. Because like Matt Hardy did stuff in Impact Wrestling the same time people were doing stuff in Lucha. The same time that I know other people in the indies were trying to come up with stuff just locally, like Christian Noir wanted to try to do a lot of video stuff, and Rev and Jordan, who I work with, they were always they were always interested in trying to come up with
Mm-hmm.
more ways to incorporate different media
And,
elements
and
stuff.
also guys that work in the media, so
Right,
they're already kind of, you know, like you, kind of coming from that mindset, right? So
Mhm. Yep.
excellent. So so you have a project you're working on now,
Mhm.
and that's the thing. Like you're doing media, you're doing printing, you're doing all this stuff alongside the wrestling.
Yep.
You know, it was where the entrepreneur side comes from, right?
hmm
So, tell me about this project that you have going on right now.
Okay. Well, anyone who knows me, I have a graphic design sign company based out of Mount Pleasant, Able Media Co. And I do signs and banners and T-shirts and stuff. So hit me up anytime you want to order anything going into Christmas. That might be nice. But basically, I came up with two different ideas based on the kind of services that I already do. One is like a variation of a coloring book where you print here's the campaign I have going. It's printed illustrations like a coloring book, but they're on an adhesive background. So you stick them up on the wall, and then little kids can color the images that you see hung up on the wall. Here's the campaign. You can see the video there. You stick them up. There's Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz illustrations that little kids can color, or adults. I know they sell adult coloring books, and those illustrations are very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone of any age who enjoys coloring, that's the first project. The second one is on the same campaign here. It's called Mr. T-shirt. It'll pull up. Basically, it's like a Mr. Potato Head concept, but for T-shirts, where I'm going to sell packs of blank T-shirts and different elements that you can mix and match to create a face on a T-shirt. So you can make them as silly or as normal or however you want to do them. If you have someone in your family that you want to try to mimic what they look like, or anything like that, basically you mix and match the different parts, and it works like how Mr. Potato Head works. You put the face together, and then you'll print them on a T-shirt, and then you can wear it around. So I'm trying to raise money to patent both of those ideas because filing a patent is very expensive. Anyone who wants to help the campaign, it would be a big help to me and my business. It's and you can order the products for yourself off of the campaign site. It's indiegogo.com/projects/imagineable.
And we'll include that in the show notes as well, so you can just click through there.
Perfect.
Don't worry if you're in your car listening.
Yep. Like I said, you can order the different products off there, the color clings or the Mr. T-shirt set. And I'm actually working with some wrestlers on both of those things because you need content for the illustrations and for the shirts. So I'm actually doing a kit that is the Rev Ron Hunt and Timothy Titan and myself. And I'm doing another set that is Brohemoth and Zeke Mercer and myself. So you can order those mix and match T-shirt sets or the.
Is that
the
what
color
was
clings.
your faction name in Fight Society?
We are the League of Unstoppabros.
Thank you. I was trying to
Yep.
remember that one Zeke was on this week.
Yep, that's Zeke, myself, and Brohemoth, the League of Unstoppabros. If you've been coming down to Fight Society, or if you haven't, come check us out. We are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and you can get yourself some merch based on our faces.
And that's cool because that's something different. Like I know in the area, like there's trading cards of the wrestlers and things like that I know Falcon does. So like it I mean, when you guys have a merchant table as a wrestler, it kind of pays to kind of stick out a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to think of new ideas for merchandise for wrestlers.
Everybody's got stickers. Everybody's got T-shirts.
Yeah, and the color clings I think are going to be real nice because I'm actually taking images from in-ring competition and turning them into black and white images, and then you can just kind of color your own poster of me or Brohemoth or the Rev or whoever I've got included. I'm actually talking to some bigger names right now, some people that I've met doing ring crew for Ring of Honor and stuff. So people who have kind of like a global following, I don't want to announce them until it's official, but I've been in talks and they asked me to send some artwork, and they like the ideas. So hopefully the projects will pick up pretty well, and I'll be able to go out to different brands, because that's ultimately that's the goal, is to be able to pitch it to big stores with big name brands. Like, I'd love to be able to mix and match, a Marvel or Disney character on a t-shirt eventually. So once I get the patents, once I start selling on a smaller scale, then the goal would be to start pitching it to,
what better than pro
companies.
wrestling to start playing with that with the characters,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So tell me, you kind of mentioned like your personal business with the wrestling. I feel very kindred spirit with that. What do you think comes from that media side that kind of gives you an edge up when you're doing the pro wrestling?
I mean, it's too much to list, really, because literally every time I'm going into a match or coming up with a promo, I think of it from different perspectives. I think of it from a design perspective, from a storytelling perspective, from a media perspective, thinking of where the best shot is going to be to do this move. Should I work to this camera? And a lot of guys start learning that kind of when they start moving up the ladder. But it's something that I've kind of been focusing on the whole time that I've been working, because I've studied film and I kind of have a good feel for storytelling, and that's the biggest part of wrestling to me, because you can put together a fantastic match, but if you don't have a story behind it, then people don't care about what they watched.
Excellent. So tell me, what is the best and worst thing about wrestling for you so far?
The best and the worst thing. I don't want to. They might be the same answer. I don't know.
All right.
The people. You have to deal with some people you don't like to deal with, but you also get to interact with a lot of great people. And I mean, it stinks. Like we've alluded to the fact that I've bounced around different promotions, and it's a frustrating thing, because I don't know if I have heat with somebody and that's why I'm not getting used there, or if it's just not the right time for me to be, involved with a certain promotion. But like one thing that the reason that it seems like I'm always off doing my different thing is because I kind of am. Like it seems like a lot of wrestlers kind of come in packs, and there will be this big influx of talent at one promotion, or a big group of people leaving another promotion, and I've kind of always been off doing my own thing. And I interact with everybody and feel like we get along, but I don't know, if I'm in with everybody the way that
it's like you're not attaching to a clique.
Yeah. It's something that I'm sure most wrestling fans can relate to, because that's what wrestling fandom is kind of based on. Is just kind of being an outcast from all of these other brands. It's kind of the Mick Foley-ism of wrestling that drew me to him as a kid, was that he always talked about how he was an outcast and he liked to stand up for the nerds and so I think everyone who is in wrestling or a part of wrestling or a fan of wrestling understands what it's like to not know you're standing with people and not feel like you necessarily fit in with the different cliques. And I try to be friendly to everybody. I've obviously been rubbed the wrong way with certain people. But
it's wrestling. Who has it?
Yeah. You let it go and you move on to the next thing. So, I mean, in a way that could be the best thing or the worst thing. Same thing. I mean, the other thing is just doing it, just getting in the ring and working your tail off. It's a gift and a curse. It's fun to be doing, but you beat yourself up. So I don't know. The best and the worst thing are kind of the same things sometimes, which is the truth with life.
Absolutely. Well, hey, you got a really cool thing. I like this project that you've been telling us about here, this show. So I'm hoping everybody goes, checks it out, supports it. I want to see kids coloring in Brohemoth. Like I think that's a really cool idea. So go check that out. Again, that Indiegogo is.
It's Indiegogo.com/projects/imagineable. You're gonna put it in your description. It's on my Facebook page, DK Able Media. Follow me on Twitter as well, DK_Able. I share it on there.
Excellent. And of course, you've been popping up at the Fight Society.
Yep, Fight Society right now is the only place where you can see me in action. Hopefully that'll change soon. I'm trying to reach out to some different places, but Brohemoth, Zeke Mercer, and myself will be taking on Steel Perfection December 13th, I believe, whatever the Friday is.
And if you're catching this afterwards, of course, that'll be online on VOD and everything, or live stream. So keep an eye out for that. I believe that's the PWX 25th anniversary show.
Yes,
officially.
Yes,
so we'll see how it happens with that, or had happened. I don't know. It depends on where you're listening to this, because I think we're releasing just the week after this officially. But of course, the live stream is happening. And you're on social media.
Yep. At DK_Able on both Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, DK Able Media.
Excellent. Go check it out. And again, if you want to see DK Able in action, I know we have a lot of the older Renegade Wrestling Alliance shows up, some other stuff. If you go to the IndyWrestling.us' YouTube page and look up Able, DK Able, Daniel
K. Able, Danny Able.
I think we're type Able, you'll find a lot of his matches.
Yeah,
so,
that's the one part that I haven't dropped.
I have to check. I'm like, okay, what is he calling himself this month? A little bit. So when I'm doing my titles for you, but go check him out. It's been fun. It's been a ride. It's been a ride seeing what he's coming up with over these years. So I go check it out. Thank you so much. Thank you, Danny, for joining us here on the show.
Yep,
if you guys want to see more of him, again, go to IndyWrestling.us and go to WrestlingMayhemShow.com to check out past interviews from this show and other podcasts and other great stuff from independent professional wrestling, and talking about the big stuff at on some of those other shows like Wrestling Mayhem Show. Thank you so much. Until next time, please support indie wrestling and please support this Indiegogo. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.